there, welcome to the archives. So today I was going to share something I wrote on LinkedIn yesterday. I was like, YouTube video to come. There's no YouTube video to come. I don't want to talk about it today. Today is a 5-year anniversary. No, that's not even true. It's 7 years. But I don't want to be, I feel positive and optimistic today, so I don't really care to go and like read a sob story. It's up online. I just need to get my version out. My goal in putting that yesterday, talking about suicide ideation, suicide attempts, failed suicide attempts. Oh, you found it! I knew you would! 1 second. I've been looking for it. That's my girl. That's it, Aria. Thank you. 1 second. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. I don't feel like talking about that today. Today I feel optimistic, I feel hopeful, I'm grateful for life. We're in Gemini season, it's June, it's Pride Month, and, but I think it is important also during Pride Month to remember that some people don't make it, some people do die by suicide, and I also, often, right now I saw Sam George going, the Ghanaians are just doing what he does, pissing me off. Talking about, oh, queer people, gay, LGBTQ is mental, big words. Anyways, and I think, first of all, you have to me, in my opinion, Christians are some of the most violent, awful people in the world. As a Christian, right? I see atheists that are living such good, holy lives, and they don't subscribe to Christianity, God, or any of that. And so just remember that there are people who don't make it, who do die by suicide, and that's not because of their mental illness per se, although perhaps we could talk about the actual mental health illness and the chemical imbalance and all of those. But often it's just people making lives shitty for people. You don't need to make lives shitty for people and then turn around and be like they have mental health issues because, well, are you an asshole to them? Are you insufferable? Ow, girl. Are you annoying? I mean, I could be annoying, but I don't think I'm going to make anybody be so annoying that somebody's going to want to take their own life just to get away from me, right? But I do see it like so many Christians just make life insufferable for so many people where they literally would rather depart from this world, and then you turn around and blame them for mental health issues. They wouldn't have mental health issues if you weren't such a jackass. They wouldn't have mental health issues if you weren't such an asshole. They wouldn't have mental health issues if you weren't bullying and oppressing and demeaning and making fun and mocking and blocking and playing God. You're not God. So I didn't want to read it. There's a whole lot going on in the world. I just don't feel right now that I want to like speak it. I needed to get it out and type it, and writing was that therapy, but I don't want to speak it. I returned to Conjuring America. I would rather talk about Mermaids instead today. Because I saw a little clip about Solange took Meg to the water. Amen. Ashe. And so it is. That's where you heal, by the water. But for the demonic, you guys are so insufferable. They're so insufferable. I'm just like, the water is demonic because of Oshun. Are you listening to yourself? It just sounds so ridiculous. So I would rather talk about Oshun and mermaids instead today. I got my blue on. I needed the throat chakra. So going back to Dr. Lindsey Stewart's The Conjuring of America, Mojo's Mermaids, Medicine, and 400 Years of Black Women's Magic. Page 36, she gets into Oshun and herbalism, how Oshun is even more central to the healing with herbs. Oshun is a river goddess. Her cool, sweet waters support life on earth, but she's also the master herbalist. And so, Osanyin, is that how you say it? The Orishas, Osanyin and Oshun, are a powerful duo when it comes to healing. On page 36, it says, It is said that without Oshun's blessings, the effort to make medicine will fail. Without Oshun's fresh waters, Osanin's plants cannot heal. There is perhaps an even greater connection between Osanin and Oshun. Forests are a major source of fresh water on the planet. And so it's talking about going back to the Yoruba pantheon, the Yoruba system, how Oshun is so necessary to healing, specifically around herbs. I ordered some herbs. I've been taking chaga. Is that how you say it? I got a whole bunch of products from, what is Ashley saying? North Love? Is that what it's called? I think it's called North Love. Or maybe not. I don't know. I just got a whole bunch of herbs and stuff. Some stuff that's also really good for curing or healing and working with. Love North is what it's called. Love North. I just got some herbs and stuff from there. So I'm over here trying to work on those aspects, turning more to herbal medicine to heal. I literally just had an appointment with the hospital about some of my period pains, and so we came up with a plan, and I'm just trying to ensure that when and if I have a child, I'm getting my body ready to carry a child, right? So what does that look like? For me, it looks like I need to invest more in eating healthier foods, which can be a little bit difficult, especially if you're dependent on the food bank like I am, right? I go to the food bank. We have one in our building. There's other resources and supports as well too. So I see a lot of conversation about eat healthy, and I just wish more of you would talk about including actual Black folk who are low income. Right? It's not good enough to say don't eat cheese. Well, I mean, okay, girl, but if you're getting it for free at the food bank and that's all you got, I'm gonna eat the cheese, and I will be accountable for that. But if we can find alternative healthy aspects that are cost efficient for low income folks, that would be really great. I would really love to see that, because it is a lot of canned food, right? It is a lot of processed foods, and then people sit there and judge people for eating processed food. Well, I'm so sorry, I'm not making 100K, 200K, 300K a month. I'm working with $300. You know what I'm saying? Y'all, I don't know, I'm getting really frustrated with some of the discourse, because so many folks are about the people and the people, but you don't live the income brackets of the people, and you don't offer advice that's for those low income folks as well too, a lot of the times. And then you sit there and judge. I mean, I would eat great too if I had access to that kind of a stuff, so maybe not. It's also a choice. Maybe I just make bad choices. But let's go back to Conjuring America. I just wanted to talk about mermaids, because I just read last night the part about Juliette and the voodoo queens. Oh no, I hope if you're Christian, please turn this off. It might really grind your gears. She's talking about that heathen demonic stuff again. The whole time you're just talking about your own culture. Stupid. So basically it talks about Marie Laveau. Is that how you say it? I learned about her when I was in New Orleans. So basically she was a freed woman. 1801 she was born is what it says here. 1881 is when she passed. She's a 19th century Creole of African, European, and indigenous descent. An illiterate free woman of color. She was dubbed by Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston was an anthropologist. I've done a post on Zora Neale Hurston before. Zora Neale Hurston called her the Queen of Conjure. And so I think that's also part of why Zora Neale Hurston was hated so much, because Christians really don't like this topic. They will just outcast you, call you all sorts of names just because you dare to dabble into your own traditional. You don't want to do that white man stuff, and now they get all up in arms and they want to cut you off and cancel you. That's fine. But I think that's part of also why Zora Neale Hurston was so problematic to people. It's because she did Voodoo and she researched this and as an anthropologist documented it, right? But Zora Neale Hurston dubbed Marie as the Queen of Conjure, and she was a historical figure that was said to be one of the most powerful women at the time. She's believed to be the most powerful woman there was. She died in 1881, and it was on national news. There was a lot of coverage in the New York Times. So she was kind of a big deal, right? 1881, at that time, she was kind of a big deal. But the reason part of why she's such a big deal is because her inner circle, during the middle of the 19th century, they were doing venerations of mermaids. Okay? So one of the women that worked under her was Juliette. And so it says here that she was not really fit for conventional slavery. She's a little bit of a rebel. Whole time I was reading is like, is she an Aquarius? Didn't do the walk that people were walking. Enslaved woman running around like she's free. And part of that is she would escape her slave masters, and one slave owner disclosed to another in his sale of Juliette that she absented herself while in his possession. So at that time, the law was she could be free, I believe, at 20, when she turned 25. She knew that the system was fickle, right? By the time I turned 25, you're probably going to change your word. She basically would run away often and get into some of the voodoo queen culture. So just to give you an definition of what voodoo is, on page 61, it says voodoo is a distinct tradition of conjure that combines Roman Catholicism with many spiritual traditions, Islamic magical charms, grigri in Senegambia, spirit-filled amulets, minkisi in the Congo, and worship of spiritual deities called Loas from the voodoo of both Haitian and the Fon people of Benin and Togo. And then the veneration of spiritual deities called Orishas by the Yoruba. So again, when you hear, especially when you hear like Black Christians talk about this is voodoo and demonic, these are some of the cultures that they're talking about. Congo, Benin, Yoruba, Senegambia, Senegal, Gambia, right? Our own people. They told, anyways, I'm not going to get into that whole conversation of brainwashing and anti-blackness, because if in 2026 you can't make the connections that people who sold and captured and kidnapped you are now the ones that are your worldview lens, they're the one who dictates what's right and wrong. Human traffickers are the ones that tell you what is right and wrong, and you really believe them, and you think people who do the old African ways are the problem. Okay. Live your life. Live your best life. We will live in sin. So it says, like Negro mammies, voodoo queens in New Orleans drew from the herbalism and conjure to heal. And basically, they were very similar. Some of the herbs that they used and plants was similar to the Negro mammies. Remember, I already talked earlier about Negro mammies and the mammy who Vicks Vapor Rub stole from. Remember, we already talked about the Negro mammies. The voodoo queens were similar to them. They used a lot of the similar. The difference was sometimes the Negro mammies were enslaved, and often the voodoo queens were free, and the voodoo queens tended to live in the heart of the metropolitan, cosmopolitan city, whereas a lot of the Negro mammies lived in rural plantations. So those are some of the differences. Voodoo queens are often free Black women, and across the South, over several generations, slave masters, this is from page 62, it says slave masters tried to make Negro mammies forget their gods, the gods of their ancestors. Like a lot of you have forgotten the gods of your ancestors and you call them demonic. But voodoo queens remembered their African gods, especially the vengeful ones, and they called upon them frequently in worship. So in 19th century New Orleans, slave-holding white people, they saw voodoo queens as a threat, which is why you see them as a threat, right? Because the slave master, somebody told you that they were a threat, but you never asked why were they a threat. who were they a threat to? Y'all don't ask enough questions for me. You just take things with a grain of salt and you run with it. Juliette turned 23 in 1847. She was sold to Marie Laveau, and some people would be like, oh my God, a black woman had a slave. What about the blacks enslaving each other? Well, often if you saw a black person who had slaves, it's because they were trying to protect them, is what it says here, right? They were motivated by a desire to offer protection from a harsh system rather than a desire to greedily benefit from unpaid labor. So if I have the money and I see that my homegirl is still enslaved, it would be better for me to say, you know what, let me just take her. I will take her under my wings as a slave. But that's really because it's better to be here than there. And so that's a little part of their punishment for running away was really, really extreme. Remember, Juliette was out on these streets. She was not on the plantation. That's not necessary. Like, it's so unnecessary. I gotta be careful what I talk about because the spirit really just be jumping in her. What did you do that for? What did you get out of that? Huh? We're talking about the voodoo queens. You want to show up to the people, eh? It's not necessary. We all know, Arya. We see what color you are. We don't have to guess what you're into. They don't need a show. So running away, punishment for running were often extreme. The first offense, if you got caught running away as an enslaved person, your ears were cut off, and then they would brand the fleur-de-lis on your shoulder. The fleur-de-lis, so you would get branded and your ear would be cut off if you got caught running away. The second time you got caught running away, your hamstring muscles, which were imperative to your ability to run, were cut, and your shoulder was branded. The third offense, you were executed. So running away was like a pretty big deal. Voodoo was too widely practiced for it to be stomped out, so a lot of the enslavers were getting really scared, right? This is why when I see people, especially Christians or Muslims or Jewish people, whoever, atheists, when I see anybody talking about witchcraft and demons and all of the spiritual work, all it shows me is like, you're afraid. And you're right to be afraid because they knew to be afraid, right? Dragging myself included, right? A lot more of us need to be more secure in ourselves and our faiths. So they couldn't stomp it out, the government, in the 19th century. So what they did is they tried to regulate it, which is what they did with all indigenous folks, right? You can't drum, you can't smudge, you can't go into the sweat lodge, you can't dance. They try to criminalize it. And so in 1817, a law was passed restricting gatherings between enslaved and free people, right? Because they were getting the idea that like, oh no, these enslaved people are meeting with the free people. They're getting ideas. They're revolting. They're rebelling. Right? But the part that they were really scared of is a lot of the enslaved and free people would gather in Congo Square. I went to Congo Square when I was in New Orleans, and it's now behind a public square behind what is now the French Quarter. And so all meetings were deemed illegal. It was literally criminal, and unless you had been granted permission by city officials. And so these voodoo queens didn't care. They carried on their worship in secret, and which was underground. Okay, so why was it a threat? Well, one of the things that they would do would be dance. Oh my God, imagine dancing is a threat to the government. Oh my God, how weak. We can't even dance because you're afraid of our dancing. And so consider a popular voodoo dance at the time called Kalinda. Is that how you say it? This dance struck fear into the hearts of slave-holding whites. This is from page 64. When performed by enslaved black men, it was become warlike, with sticks brandished in mock fights. Stick fighting? Trinidad, they do the same thing. What is it called when they do that in Trinidad? I don't remember. When it was performed by enslaved black women, the lyrics of the song that accompanied the dance was basically like, I was a negress, more beautiful than my mistress. Already the white women are like, oh, she's not more beautiful than me. I used to steal pretty things. And so it talks about stealing from their slave owners and these play scenes of challenge from combat to theft. It left an 18th century French historian to say that nothing is to be more dreaded than to see the Negroes assemble together on Sundays under the pretense of Kalinda or the dance. So this historian understood that these meetings where they danced the Kalinda, the enslaved people would often sell what they had stolen to one another, and he said that they would commit crimes, right, and plot rebellions. And so all of this it really was. What you consider demonic now was once criminalized. That's why you believe that it's really bad. They have to make you believe that it's bad so you don't do it. Right? They don't want you to do it because that is a gateway. Not to drugs or bad criminal behavior, but to freedom. Whatever and however that looks like. So perhaps the most threatening of these conjure women was that they were teaching enslaved about the feminine mysteries, and they don't like that. They don't want you tapping into your femininity. Oh, God forbid, don't talk about sex. Definitely don't talk about masturbation. You are not allowed to have pleasure, right? Women having pleasure? No, no, no. Why? Did you guys ask why? You didn't ask why. You believe them when they said it was just for reproduction. Your only purpose here, God brought you this great big giant earth just to pop out babies for men and raise. It's not my portion. So part of it is because they were teaching them about mermaids. They, for whatever reason, mermaids was really, really threatening to them. So the newspapers report that the police often confiscated mermaid figurines during voodoo raids, because they would do raids, right? And so shortly after the Civil War, the police and conjure women in New Orleans were in a decades-long fight over the possession of figurines. And mermaids, this mermaid figurine, a symbol of 19th century New Orleans voodoo, is a culmination of a very long relationship between conjure and slave rebellions across centuries in the United States. So I'm just going into chapter 8 where I'm learning about the mermaids. I'll be back to share more about the mermaids, but I just wanted to share that. That's what I would rather talk about that today. If your religion says you can't even say ancestor, you can't even pray or thank them for the life that they had. If somebody in your life passes away and you can't even talk to them because they are not real and they are ghosts, and that's not... If you're okay with that, that's okay. To me, that's very restrictive, and I want to know why. Why are you so threatened by black people specifically tapping into the past of their ancestors? My hands are dry. Like, what is that about? And to know that, like, mermaid figurines, the police would confiscate mermaid figurines. Imagine taking the Virgin Mary. And people do take the Virgin Mary, because even the Virgin Mary is very threatening to people, right? When your religion views women as something that, like, you can't even, and you as a woman can't tap into, why is that? And usually it's because it scared the men. It scared the men, and they've scared you, and now you're scared, and you're just walking around being like, oh, Meg the Stallion, Solange took Meg to the water and she got her doing that voodoo shit. Do you hear yourself? Why are you so afraid? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Beloved, what are you so afraid of? I know what they were afraid of. But you're doing their work. Oh. So white supremacy has you. You're gone. We'll never get you back. To me, you're a lost cause. We can be civil, but, like, I can never trust you, just like you already don't trust me. You probably will hate me just like you hate yourself. Just like I hate myself, and I'm working on that. But I'm thinking about that. The mermaid is my next tattoo, whether you like it or not. That's my next tattoo. If I had money, I would have gotten my mermaid tattoo already. I already drew it. I have to fix it. My mermaid is gonna have Medusa. I have to work on it. It'll have Medusa's head with the afro. I already drew it. And if that's demonic to you, okay, stay far away from me. If you pray for me that I'll be saved, but I also think you might need to be saved from some of this. I don't want to say propaganda, because everybody using the word propaganda, it is a form of brainwashing, but again, your brain is your brain. This month is Brain Injury Month. So if your brain is washed in the blood of Jesus, soaked in the blood of Jesus, or Allah, or Buddha, or whoever, right? That's your business, not mine. That's your business, not mine. But I'm really thinking about how some of these gods were very, very, very threatening, specifically to slaveholders, right? And I don't respect anybody who thinks that human life, that specific black people's lives are not human, and to the point where they can enslave you, and then they get to be the moral compass for you. How are you the moral compass for me? You don't know right. You are a sinner yourself. So that's what I was thinking about. If folks are dying by suicide, it might be a chemical imbalance in their brain. Maybe they need more endorphins, but also you just might be a jackass. You just might be a jackass. And that conversation really makes people uncomfortable, especially if you've lost loved ones to suicide. But the environment is not one where the person feels they can live. And that's not just about their brain. That's also about the environment that they're in. People would literally rather depart this earth than to be around some of their circles. But their circles are good Christian human beings who love them so much, and we did everything we could, and it was just the gaze. The gaze took them. Okay. In solidarity.